What up, Fight World? It's your boy Ego, and I'm back with some more boxing. So I'm back with a new segment that I've added to the channel, and it's Monday Mail. It's basically questions from you, the viewers. Let me know what you guys want to talk about, and we'll talk about it. I'll give you my honest opinion as always. But I have OCD, so I like structure. I get tons of questions from different things, Instagram, Twitter, various YouTube videos that I've done and stuff. So it gets kind of hard to answer all of the questions. So I think having a centralized location where we can get those answers, it makes it easier for everyone, and people who share the same question as you, they get to hear the answer. So if you have any questions for me, serious questions that you want me to answer and you want to get my take on it and topics to discuss, let me know in these videos. They're going to be on Mondays. It's Ego Monday Mail, and then I'll just go through the mailbox and see what people have to say and give you my honest opinion. And at the end of this video, if you have a comment for next week, leave it in the comments below so I could talk about that and pick some questions. And if I don't get to pick your question, don't get butthurt, don't get mad. But for the sake of time, I have to select only certain questions. And it's just, I can't, I mean, I'll be doing a 40-minute video because I'm long-winded anyway. I'll be doing a 40-minute video if I answered every single question. So I have to, you know what I mean, make a business decision, answer the questions that I think the masses want to know, or the questions that are getting voted up and stuff like that. So let's get started. And another thing, I know the YouTube community guidelines. For that reason, I have to blur the people's name who actually wrote these, because YouTube community guidelines, it prohibits you from actually showing somebody's username in your YouTube video. See, I know my shit. So I can't do that. I mean, I can still say names, but I have to blur it out to cover my tracks. And let's get right into it. So the first question that comes from Miguel. He says, name 2 future prospects that you're following that has potential of stardom and why. Now, this is a real good question. I would honestly have to say, for me, it would be Earl Spence Jr. and Felix Verdejo. I think these 2 guys are very solid. And the reason some people are like, why'd you pick them? And I'll talk about that. First of all, when I think of prospects, I think of somebody who hasn't really reached that pinnacle. They haven't really had much publicity and exposure, things like that. So I'm not going to put on like a Keith Thurman, a Triple G, guys like that, because they've had some level of exposure. So I don't really consider them quote unquote prospects. I'm talking about the guys that the fans by and large don't necessarily know because they're just coming to the forefront. Now, the reason I picked Felix is, if you follow me on Instagram and follow me in my channel, I've been real big up and telling you guys that this dude is the truth. I really think he's the goods. He has speed. He has power. He looks very composed for his age. And he just looks like an overall good fighter. Someone that can easily take the torch from Miguel Cotto when he decides to retire, which is probably, in all honesty, depending on how his next fight goes, it's probably not that many fights. Puerto Rico needs the next coming, you know what I mean? The next Trinidad, the next Cotto, the next Gomez. They need that fighter. And I think Verdejo can really be that. He can be the next great Puerto Rican champion. So that's why I selected him. I actually, if you watch his last fight, I think he has one of the best 2014 KOs. So that's why I added him. As far as Earl Spence Jr., I mean, what's there not to like about him? He has power. He's focused. He's confident in himself. He has a skill set. To me, I love boxing, so I like when someone's a complete fighter more than anything. I mean, I obviously like a good slugfest as well, but I like seeing fighters that are complete, where they are mindful of their defense, where they do have an offense, those kind of things, where you know what I'm saying, is you're not relying on solely power, or you're not relying solely on your legs. You got to mix it up a bit, and I think Earl Spence Jr. does that. I like watching him, and the way he's fighting, and he's been fighting. I think he's just killing and moving up in competition is definitely the next step up for him. So we could really see what these guys are made of. And ultimately for Felix and also for Earl Spence, we just got to see them in with better opposition. See how their chin is. See how they deal if they have to go the full distance. See how they deal with a cut or adversity. Things like that. And that's all that really remains for me to see in them, and I got to see those, and that's what I would ask for any fighter. But as far as a prospect, those are the people that I'm checking for and entertained by, and I'm definitely looking forward to them, and I think they have a bright future. Another person I would put on the list, I don't know if you would call him, but I would say runners up would be like Vasyl Lomachenko, Anthony Joshua, Oscar Valdez, Beterbiev. Those are people that aren't really on people's radar right now that I feel have a bright future. I don't know about necessarily international stardom with all those guys, but I think they have a good skill set and a bright future. So the next question is from Boca. He says, Cotto took over after Trinidad. Do you think Verdejo is the real deal from Puerto Rico? Will Cotto pass the torch to him, or will he end up like Juanma Lopez? Let's not forget Juanma was a hot prospect back in the day before he met Salido. And I kind of went over that with my last answer, and I definitely think Verdejo is the goods, and I definitely wouldn't compare him to Juanma Lopez. I think just from a skill set standpoint, Juanma was always limited. He has tons of heart, but he was never the guy with the best chin, and he was never the guy that was the most skillful. You know what I'm saying? When I see certain people put things together, they have an entertaining style or whatnot. But when I look at Juanma Lopez, even back then, even before the Salido fights, I looked at him as a guy who more or less had a ceiling. He had a window. He had a shelf life. And that's just based on his style. I really see Felix being a bit more defensive minded and a bit more of a complete fighter than Juanma Lopez. So I think Felix Verdejo can be the real deal. And there's been a lot of guys from Puerto Rico who they say are going to be the next person. They were talking about Thomas Delorme and different things like that. But as far as like the next Cotto, the next Trinidad, I would definitely put my money on Felix. Next question is from Jose. He says, Ego, who do you think will take over boxing when Floyd and Manny retire? Great videos. Keep up the good work. There's a couple guys. I would definitely refer back to the last two questions with my prospects. I think they have a strong chance of becoming just future title holders, future champions. So Felix Verdejo, Earl Spence, Vasyl Lomachenko, Nicholas Walters. You got Anthony Joshua, who looks pretty unstoppable. Beterbiev, Kovalev, possibly, if he beats Bernard Hopkins. There's a ton of guys out there who I think can really take over, and they have exciting styles. I like Canelo, too. Triple G. There's a ton of guys that I think can kind of pass the torch. I think Canelo, just from fan base, if he gets some more solid performances. Triple G, he looks like he's money. Those are guys that I would say could take over. Demetrius Andrade, Keith Thurman. These are all guys that I really see developing and building, and you know what I mean, and ultimately doing pretty well for themselves in the sport called boxing. All right, next question comes from TJ. He says, how you feel about the WBO stripping Chris Algieri of his junior welterweight title? Good question. I don't like it. I don't approve of it. I think it's some bullshit. I think, one, we have too many belts in the sport of boxing. Two, I feel with the different sanctioning bodies, the rules aren't really consistent, if that makes any sense. Like, you got a guy like Floyd Mayweather Jr. who has a title at 154, and he ain't fought nobody at 154 since, I guess you say, Canelo, and that was last September. That was September 2013, if I'm not mistaken. So he's had his belt, to my knowledge, he's had his belt from the Canelo fight at a catchweight from September 2013 all the way to October 2014, if I'm not mistaken. And then Chris Algieri fought Provodnikov and got the belt. And that was, I don't know the exact month off the top of my head. I want to say March, maybe April, springtime. And they're stripping him of it already. And we know he's fighting Pacquiao. It's just like, obviously it's a big money mega fight for him. It's a big payday, over $1 million. No one's going to pass up that opportunity, but like, give the man a second. Like, let's see the outcome of that fight before you strip him of it. So I really don't like the decision to strip Chris Algieri of the belt. I think he's a good dude. He seems like a very humble cat, and I just think it's very premature for him to do that. Meanwhile, you got guys like Danny Garcia who have belts with the S, and they keep getting their shit postponed by Al Heyman and different things like that. Danny Garcia is supposed to fight Victor Postal. That's his mandatory. And for whatever reason, the fight was supposed to go to purse bid. Didn't happen. And they were supposed to agree on the terms. Didn't happen. Purse bid didn't happen. And we have yet to see that fight. Same thing with Bermain Stavern and Deontay Wilder. To my knowledge, this has not been finalized. yet this is a mandatory fight. So I really don't like it, nor do I understand how it works. Like, why is Chris Algieri, who's had his belt less time than Danny Garcia and Deontay Wilder or whatever, why is he getting his shit stripped immediately? So I don't really agree with it or like it. Next question is from Timothy. Do you see Lucas Matthysse versus Adrien Broner happening? If so, who would you pick to win? Now, to me, that is a very easy question. No offense. But I would pick Lucas Matthysse in a fucking heartbeat. I would clearly pick Matthysse for the simple fact I seen Broner getting caught with the same shots in the Emmanuel Taylor fight that he got caught with in the fight with Marcos Maidana. I think Lucas Matthysse is underrated. I don't think he is. I think people take the Danny Garcia, and keep in mind, I picked on my channel. Go do your homework if you don't believe me. On my prediction video, I said it was a tough fight, but I picked Danny Garcia to beat Lucas Matthysse. People call me crazy, and I think people blow losses up out of the water. You know what I mean? They blow it out of proportion. They're like, oh, Danny Garcia swole his eye up and beat his ass, so he sucks now. Like, that's not how I work. And Danny Garcia, if you guys remember that fight, even though I picked him to beat Matthysse, it wasn't a walk in the park. Lucas was dangerous all 12 rounds, even with the knockdown. Like, his eye was swelling, and he was still dangerous. And I remember distinctly mid to late in the fight, he knocked Danny Garcia's mouthpiece out, like damn near into Angel Garcia's lap. It flew, like, and they showed it in slow motion and shit. So he's a big puncher, and he's dangerous because he has heart. So I think a guy like Lucas Matthysse, he showed you that. He showed you he's tough. He showed you that in the John Molina Jr. fight, where Molina knocked him down twice, and he was coming off of a loss to Danny Garcia. Got back up, got his shit together, went back to boxing, opened up his jab, and just, I think he's more of a boxer puncher than a pressure fighting, like, one-dimensional power punch slugger. And I don't think enough people give him credit for that. I think he beat Devin Alexander, and I thought the Zab Judah fight was very close. I have to watch them both again, but last time I seen those fights, I gave Lucas Matthysse the Devin Alexander fight for sure, and then the Zab Judah was like close where I wouldn't have been bothered either way, depending on who won. But again, I got to watch those fights. That was some time ago. And again, the one loss to Danny Garcia, you lost to the lineal champ. That's not a bad loss. But as far as Broner, I like Broner. He's entertaining. Sometimes he's over the top. Sometimes he annoys people. But I like the fact that he's calling people out. I just, as from a prediction standpoint, I just don't see him beating a guy like Lucas Matthysse. I think Lucas Matthysse is very deadly to the body. He's a big puncher, bigger puncher than Emmanuel Taylor. And Emmanuel Taylor was clipping him with shots, and it was a competitive fight. So imagine Lucas Matthysse hitting Broner with those same exact shots. I really don't see. I just don't see it. I don't see Broner using footwork often. He fights kind of like Floyd Mayweather fights now, where he uses his feet less. But I think he needs to fight like the old Floyd Mayweather in the lighter divisions, where Floyd was more agile and cat-like instead of fighting flat-footed. Because a guy like Floyd Mayweather, he's a veteran. He's been in the sport 18, 19 years. He can do that because he has the knowledge. He has it up top. Broner is, to a degree, learning on the job still. He had an amateur career or whatever, but he's still learning on the job in the pro rankings. Another thing with Broner, like I said, I take nothing away from him. I'm glad he's calling people out. I think the sport needs more of that. But as far as Broner, I don't know if he's mentally stable. Like, sometimes he seems preoccupied with the wrong things at the wrong time, if that makes any sense. Broner, in the fight with Marcos Maidana, he was getting his ass beat, and there was a lull in the action, and he thought within himself, hey, let me butt fuck this dude and dry hump him, like, out of nowhere. Why would you do that? Especially when you're losing. If you were winning the fight, that's one thing. You want to have these showman antics. That's one thing. But you were losing the fight. You don't have time to horse around and play around when you're clearly being embarrassed with the fist. You know what I'm saying? So doing the dry humping and stuff like that, I'm not really sold with how strong he is mentally. So that's basically the questions that I've selected for this particular episode. Leave your questions for next week in this video and any kind of whatever else feedback you guys have. The only thing I won't do on these videos with the, well, not the only thing, but one of the only rules to this is if it is a sign fight, then I'm not going to do it because I'm going to save those for my actual prediction videos. But like in this episode, the Lucas Matthysse, Adrien Broner, that's not a signed fight, so I don't have a problem talking about it early. But if it's a fight like Bernard Hopkins and Kovalev, something that's already underway, then I'm going to save that because I'd rather talk about that in a whole separate video, if that makes sense. So leave your questions for next week's episode. Let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like my video. As always, hate, comment, or subscribe. Till next video, it's Ego signing off.